As a Latina in the military, you have the opportunity of doing things that very few women have done before. You get to serve your country, be a role model, and use your experiences and the things that you have learned for the greater good. Today, you will hear from 5 successful women, 2 officers and 3 enlisted, from different services and ranks, who will offer guidance and advice on leadership and the importance of self-development. Moderating our Nurturing Latina Success panel, I am happy to introduce Master Sergeant Christiane Johnson. She currently serves as the Superintendent to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. She articulates Chief of Staff of the Air Force priorities and decisions critical in executing all Air Force strategic activities supporting the Department of Defense and allies. Additionally, Sergeant Johnson also serves as engagements liaison, interfaces with senior civilian and military members of the Secretariat, Air Staff, Joint Staff, Major Commands, Office of the Secretary of Defense, Congress, and the White House on all administrative and official engagement items for the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Thank you, Master Sergeant Johnson, for joining us today, and please help me introduce the following panelists, who will also be recognized during the award ceremony later this morning.
Thank you, Senior Master Sergeant Vasquez, for the kind introduction. Today, I am honored to introduce 4 amazing women leading the way in our United States military. Captain Joanne Bourdian, representing the U.S. Coast Guard. Lieutenant Colonel Cindy Serrano Roberts, representing the U.S. Air Force. Sergeant Major Girinelli Mari Siriaco, representing the U.S. Army. And Petty Officer First Class Lorena Morales, representing the U.S. Navy. Thank you for joining us today. If you don't mind, please tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you do in the service. Captain Bourdian, we can start with you.
Thank you. I'm Jo Bourdian. I'm a captain of the U.S. Coast Guard. My current duties are I serve as Sector Commander and Captain of the Port at Coast Guard Sector Miami, Florida, which means that I direct all Coast Guard operations in a 250,000 square mile area of responsibility that includes about 180 miles of coastline in South Florida. So it really and truly is my great pleasure to provide Coast Guard services to the vibrant South Florida community. Our job essentially is to preserve the safety and security of our waterways, save lives, and preserve the vital marine economy and the marine environment in South Florida. Personally, I'm a kid from Queens who moved to South Florida when my dad retired from the police force. I went to the Coast Guard Academy 3 weeks after I graduated high school because I was looking for free college. I will say it is the least informed, best decision I ever made. I fell in love with the service, with its missions, the humanitarian and life-saving aspect of the Coast Guard. I also really grew into myself as a person, as a leader, and I'm proud to say I'm a member-to-member service family. My husband just retired after 27 years on active duty in the Coast Guard, and we have 3 amazing sons who are 14, 14, and 13. Thank you so much for including me on this incredible panel of distinguished leaders.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome to you, and congratulations to your husband and your family. Lieutenant Colonel Roberts.
Hi, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Cindy Serrano Roberts. I am also dual military, as Captain Bourdian is as well. My husband is actually in the Space Force. We're stationed at Camp Smith and Headquarters Pacific Air Forces here in Honolulu. I also made a very great and informed decision when I enlisted in the Air Force about 24 years ago. And along the way, I certainly found my calling and my gifts and a desire and passion to serve others. So my background right now is I'm the chief of the Directors Action Group in the Services Manpower and Personnel Directorate here at Headquarters Pacific Air Forces. And basically what that means is our team synthesizes and crafts strategic messaging regarding services, which is sort of like MWR, personnel and manpower support for the Commander of Pacific Air Forces, for our A1, for commanders and leaders in the field, and our airmen and families. So there's nothing that any of our airmen and families do without us touching them and supporting them. It's a very fulfilling role. So I hail from the Bronx, New York. I am a very proud New Yorker, and it's an honor to be a part of this just esteemed panel and to represent the incredible talent emerging from the Bronx and the greater New York area. Thank you.
Welcome. We're happy to have you. Sergeant Major Mari Siriaco.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sergeant Major Girinelli Mari Siriaco. I am currently stationed here for Leonardwood, Missouri. I am under the Futures Command for the Maneuver Support Development Capability Integration Director. And my job here is as an advisor, as a senior enlisted advisor for the threat component engineering, MP, and chemical that I here in the school for Leonardwood. I enjoy in the Army, and I shift my career very drastically. I joined in the Army late, in my late 20s, and I shift from medical school. I dropped medical school to become engineering. It was a very difficult decision for me as an individual and as well for my parents. Because I switched that and I made that decision based on my last year of medical school, and I start all over again, but I have no regret. I love my profession and I enjoy in the Army, and I fell in love with my profession, and the opportunity that I received in the Army as a female engineering, it was amazing. And if I had to do it again, I will do it again.
Wow, Sergeant Major, thank you for that introduction. I'm sorry for anyone that you left at medical school, but we're happy to have you with us, and I'm sure the Army gained quite the soldier. So welcome again.
Thank you.
Petty Officer First Class Morales, welcome.
Hello, I'm Ellen Lorena Morales. I'm a paralegal in the United States Navy. I joined the Navy in 2008, and like everybody else, it was just a decision that I needed to make for myself, and my parents weren't very excited about it, but they're on board now. And I am also dual military, so my husband and I have both been in for about 14 years, and we have 4 kids. Right now we're stationed at NAS Lemoore, and that's in California. I am here as the leading petty officer, and I take care of trial, command services, and the legal assistance office. I was born and raised here in California, but my parents are both from Oaxaca, Mexico. And yeah, they've taught me many lessons, and one of them was to be who I want to be, and this is where I want to be.
Very nice to meet you. Welcome and congratulations again. We're happy to have all of you amazing leaders in our service, in our services, and all of the branches of our services with us today. So we're going to get right to it. I have some very intriguing questions, and maybe they will motivate you to dig deep a little bit into your journey and your testimony, and we can learn from you today. So as Latina women, we obviously face some challenges, but we want to hear from you. What are some of the most significant challenges that specifically as a Latina you have faced while you've served in the military? And we can go in any order. We are excited to hear from all of you.
Well, I'll share. In the Air Force, Latinas in the officer corps make up about 1.8% of field grade officers, which is a very, very small amount. And I remember as an airman when I enlisted back in 1997, it was years before I saw a Hispanic officer, nonetheless a female, in a senior leader position. And I didn't realize how meaningful that would be until I started to see Hispanic senior leaders. And until I became a field grade officer and I started to seek out mentees and I started to be sought out more by women in general, but specifically Hispanic women.
And I would say, you know, my early experience is very, very similar. When I graduated from the Coast Guard Academy, I spent my first 4 years of commissioned service at sea and was either the only woman on the ship or for 1 year of those first 4 years, there were 2 women on a ship, 210-foot medium endurance cutter. So I think, you know, every junior officer is struggling with developing the technical skills to be a proficient operational specialist, and also to learn how to lead a crew that, you know, has been enrolled in operations for longer than you have. And I think just layering that that sense of belonging uncertainty, kind of the feeling of where do you fit in, just creates an additional layer of challenge for me as an individual, as a Latina woman. But looking back, I'm sure there were lots of folks feeling what I was feeling, but you know, at that particular moment in our service, in our services, I would venture a guess, it was different in terms of how well we were able to communicate with one another about those kinds of feelings, and having that be read as authenticity and strength through vulnerability, and not as some version of weakness or a lack of belonging. So honestly, that was as much about me as an individual as it was about the organization I had chosen to serve in. And I really am proud to say that today the Coast Guard is a place that really elevates concepts like inclusive leadership and psychological safety. And, you know, there's a flag voice that was put out almost 15 years ago about the ability to speak other languages in the workplace as long as you're not discussing operations. Is something as simple as that really makes quite a difference. That was a long answer, but that's my answer.
Yeah, for me, it was very interesting because I entered in the delay program. So I had to wait until my MOS was available. Back in the 90s, after Desert Shield, Desert Storm, I was not participating in those 2 operations because I was civilian. The Army, as we know, going through a transformation to change. And the MOS that I entered, before I was 3 different MOSs, so I had to wait until the Army made the resolution and accept these 3 MOS and 1 MOS. And I was very fortunate to be selected as a prototype MOS, to be the first female in the group in the AIT when I came in the Army. We were 17 in the class. My MOS is what we call it ITRO, inter-service, because it's a Marine, Navy, all the services here come through Fort Leonard Wood for the AIT. So I was the first female Latina in 1994 that came as a technical engineer, especially. Further down on the road, my first duty station was on Fort Hood, Texas. And so, well, as a small group there, we are so very technical, and I was the first female. And I said that every job has the ups and downs and bring challenge to the table. The way that we are going to embrace those challenges is the way in a positive way, you know, because we cannot look the negative. We had to embrace it. We had to maintain our motivation and dedication and the love for the job that we are going to do, because we just not represent the Latina, we represent the woman in the service and the armed forces overall. Because if we go there and expose ourselves in a negative way, then we're talking in a different way. Also, we send the wrong message to the other nation that we go and put our footprints in there. I have the better opportunity to be in many places through decades in my 26 years in service. And I'm very proud to say that my career is very diversified, operational and strategic, because I've been there and I'll be able to influence another females from another country. They also serve in the same footprints that I was, and they look us as a, you know, a role model to emulate so they can fight for what is right for them.
For me, I think my challenge, it's very different from many of you, but my challenge was actually the language barrier. I was raised by 2 immigrant parents, and everything we spoke in at home was Spanish. And then I come into the military, and I went to school here, and I understand the English language fairly well. But whenever I'm put into a position where I need to speak in public or give training or anything of that nature, I'm always second guessing myself, or I'm always thinking, well, what if I don't sound smart enough or anything like that. So I think my language barrier was my challenge and has been my challenge throughout my career, but I'm always catching myself even looking up synonyms for things that or words that I'm overusing. But even though it has been a challenge, it hasn't stopped me from getting to where I wanted to go. And I think I'm just going to have to continue to work on that.
To be honest, all of your challenges really just sound like they were motivators. Whatever it is that you face at that moment, all of you ladies are certainly trailblazers. If no one's told you that, let me tell you. It's incredible to hear your stories, and I can relate actually in some of them. Either the language barrier, I was born and raised in Mexico actually, and came to the States in the language barrier. I spoke only Spanish at home. Or being the only female in a conference room, in a meeting. And so I applaud you for facing those challenges and totally overcoming them. Now that we've kind of talked a little bit about what challenges you faced, we would like to hear what are some of the most proud moments that you've had while you were, or since you've been in the service. What has made you the most proud?
For me,
Put it in. No, I'm just kidding.
for me, my proud moment is to see my soldier progress in the army, build their family, you know, and allow me to be part of their family. I don't have kids on my own. I'm not married, but I feel like I'm married to the army for 26 years. And the soldiers that I have under me, that I had the opportunity to develop them, to coach them, and that's my biggest proud moment.
I have a dual proud moment, if you will. So we have a 2.5-year-old, Lucille Grace, and she's when COVID hit, she was about a year old, and so I worked from home the majority of the last year, and so she rarely saw me in uniform. And now that she's older and her memory is developing, it's very important for me to wear my uniform for her and for her to see me, because while her father serves, it's not just him, it's both of us. And I'm also incredibly proud to represent the raw, untapped talent of the emerging leaders coming out of the Bronx, Castle Hill, all the 5 boroughs, New York City, and the tri-state area. The grit, the creativity, and the intellect that is coming out of not just New York City, but urban areas is incredible. And I'm very proud to be a product of that environment.
Gosh, I would also have a hard time pinpointing the single thing I'm proudest of, but Senior, I think the bios will be posted somewhere, and if you read my bio, what you'll see in there is that coming off my tour as a senior duty officer in the White House Situation Room, I actually got out of the Coast Guard for 2 years. It was just that my continued active duty service was inconsistent with my priorities as a spouse and as a parent. We'd had a set of twins, and then a year and 5 days later, I had our 3rd son, which is like, happened. Not sure I recommend it, but that's what's up with our family. But you know, at least in the Coast Guard, of women who are married, better than 50% are married to other service members. And so the challenge of balancing dual military careers, keeping both spouses competitive for advancement or promotion is really a challenge. And for me, at that time, I had spent 6 years at sea. 2 of those were in command, 3 years representing the Coast Guard on Capitol Hill and 2 years in the White House. And so not only was I a little bit fatigued, but really my priorities was to focus on our young family. And this is not a what's your best piece of advice discussion, but I'll offer it out there anyway. I figured if I couldn't come back and perform and compete and continue to promote and get the assignments I was looking for, then that was the decision I was willing to live with. But what I had learned in my first 11 years of service, because that's the point at which I had gotten out, was that my performance was the most important ingredient to my success. And I think that's true no matter which color cloth you wear of our nation, or whether you're in private industry or public nonprofit, wherever you serve or work, your performance is the most important component of your success. And so I kind of took a risk and got out, and I couldn't be happier or prouder of that decision, to really show my kids how important they were to me, right? Like we're people, that's how you show people what's important to you, is you make it a priority. And also I think it recalibrated who I was as a person and set me up for being a better senior leader in the organization, having that personal experience as a selective reservist and also as a stay-at-home spouse supporting an active duty service member. The other thing I really, really am proud of is in the early 2010s, when the discussion about sexual assault in all of our services reached sort of a crescendo on the Hill and publicly and in the media. I was a graduate school student at the time, coming back off my temporary separation. I went back into operations and competed and promoted and got reaccepted to a grad school program I had turned down. So that's that performance thing. But I was getting my master's of public administration, and we had stood up a campaign office to deal with the SAPR issue. And so I called the campaign office and just asked them what they didn't have the capacity to focus on. And that thing was the victim on recovery. And so I spent my graduate school program focused on Coast Guard policies that already existed that could be adapted to support victims, take a victim-centered approach to recovery, preserve their privacy and protect their dignity and their opportunity to serve for as long as they would choose to do so. And I'm really proud to say that now the Coast Guard has a standalone recovery program that's based on my graduate level research as part of that particular effort.
For me, I think the thing that I'm most proud of is in the service is my career hasn't been that long, but I was in aviation for 10 years. And as an aviation, I was not that great at my job, but as soon as I converted to legal men, I'm a paralegal in the Navy now, excuse me. And as soon as I converted, I started to shine and I started to show what I can really do. And I think it had to do a lot with how passionate I am about my job now. And I think one of the most proudest moments was converting to legal men and showing what I can really bring to the table and how I can help the mission by doing that.
Honestly, through hearing all of you, not only do I feel like I'm connected to you, but this really goes back to, my opinion, to our values, right? We, for the most part, you all mentioned what you were passionate about, which made you thrive, and it helped others and family. I don't know if it's just a Latino thing, but for sure we're very connected and close. Most of us are very close to our families. And that can be, I think we have like second, third, fourth cousins, and we're all just cousins, and everybody's invited to your home. And so I love what you said, Colonel Roberts, regarding giving that example to your daughter. I have a 7-year-old who wears Master Sergeant stripes occasionally, and she used to show up. Previously, one of my previous assignments was a military training instructor for Air Force basic training, essentially the equivalent to a drill instructor. And my daughter would show up in her uniform and salute and call cadence. And whether it's your child or the airmen that you're upbringing and you're helping them change because someone picked you up, right, Sergeant Major? And so now you're picking your soldiers up as well. So that makes me very happy to hear from all of you. Thank you for that. Now
Yes,
to get into a little bit of a more maybe serious subject, or maybe one that's going to make you dig deeper into your emotional intelligence and or regarding your experiences, regarding deployments, part of our lives, part of our lifestyles, part of the careers we chose. Maybe without even knowing it, it was part of the careers that we chose. But how did you, in your level, in your positions, whether current or previous, how did you deal with those deployments? However, it was that you were deployed, because some may argue that a stateside deployment is not a deployment. I could argue that it is, because that still means you're away from your norm and you're supporting a different operation. But regardless of your deployment experience, how did you get through those?
well, it's difficult, the decision. And when 9/11 happened, that's when pretty much everybody was riding that roller coaster. The 6 months, 12 months, 15 months. But I don't know if it's because we are Latina, we come from a strong family and a strong value, that we are be able to bounce back and be more resilient and face those difficult moments in our life. One, because our family always gonna be there to support us and make that transition when we leave home and we left the loved one behind. We know they are going to be well taken care of. And that's a release for every mother, every father, and they are in the armed forces, knowing that the loved one, especially the children, are going to be well taken care of when we are, making the sacrifice and going to fulfill our duty in someplace else. And in my case particular, I don't have kids, but I see my two brothers, they serve in the Army as well. And one was chemical and the other one, based on the natural of his job, I cannot go into there, but you can read between the lines. Seeing them going before me and leave those kids behind, I was able to be close to my nieces and nephew at that moment until my time comes, and then we relate to our parents at that time to take care of them. And no matter what you have going on in your life, separation is a milestone that any soldier wants to face when they have to depart to a foreigner country.
I will say from my own experience, when I was going on patrol myself or deploying myself, I wasn't married. But I looking back at that time, the challenges were no less significant, because what made me whole, while it didn't yet include my spouse and my children, certainly did include my parents who were struggling with health, grandparents, tios and titas, like, the people who make you whole, it doesn't matter if it's by birth or by choice, remain in your heart. And I will say that I remember making a mistake. I was in command of a ship and we were getting underway, and I had the opportunity to schedule a port call near where my parents were living in South Florida. But I had promised the crew a foreign port call in the Bahamas. At the time, we were dealing with a humanitarian crisis, sort of a combined Haitian and Cuban migration that was very, very significant. And we kept having this port call canceled. And I kept my promise to my crew. Instead of pulling into South Florida, even though my grandma at the time was very sick, and she passed my second night in that port call. And I bring that up for the younger leaders who are listening, because the lesson I learned was really to be honest with myself about my priorities and be honest with my crew about what I need as a leader. Of course, you know, strength is important and taking care of them is primary, but leading by example in a way that acknowledges some, you know, personal needs, personal priorities outside of the uniform is an important lesson I could have shown them through my actions to take care of myself. And I don't think I gave them enough credit for accepting that. So just a lesson learned.
Captain Berdian, I just want to thank you so much for your transparency and your vulnerability, because I'm taking mental notes right now, just listening to you and all the ladies on the panel. And like you, I have not deployed while I've been married and been a mom. And so when I reflect back on that time as a single airman deployed, you know, I was fortunate enough to have just a great command team. They were always there. They made sure, you know, my commander had kind of like this father-daughter talk with me before I stepped off. And he was like, now LT, listen, you know, I'm here and this is my cell phone number and this is my wife's email. And so they cared a lot more than they had to. But also, you know, my parents, my brother, my sister, my friends, that village, you know, they always made sure that I knew there was an open line there. And I have to just give a shout out to all the chaplains, you know, in the Air Force, in the Space Force, because having chaplains there in a war zone, in a combat zone, just walking around, just keeping their finger on the pulse of every airman and guardian deployed, I mean, it made such a huge difference on all of my deployments. So
I returned from a deployment here in December of 2020. So I was gone for 8 months. I was on the USS Nimitz with Carrier Strike Group 11. It was actually a deployment that I volunteered for because I'm on shore duty. I wasn't supposed to be going yet. And I really thought it was going to be about 2 months. It ended up being 8 months. So I had to say bye to my kids during the whole pandemic. And they stayed home with my husband. But I made sure to surround myself with you know, people that were going through the same thing, so we could keep each other, you know, on check. We could check on each other's mental health, make sure that we were taking care of each other as far as even exercising, having enough time to just exercise on the ship. There isn't really much to do on a ship, but MWR does a really great job on having like fun activities. They do karaoke, we have talent shows, we do arts and crafts and things like that. But I think the biggest thing was having enough trust in my husband to be a single parent while I was gone, and knowing that my kids were resilient enough to withstand, you know, the distance and the time. Unfortunately, on the ship, we don't have the means to FaceTime or to call every day. Email was our communication, and when email went down for weeks at times, it was really, really hard. But I think my tribe on the ship made it possible for me to come back and see my children and see my husband again.
Wow. Lieutenant Colonel Roberts, I agree with you. I definitely applaud Captain Berdian for her transparency and honesty. Really, I think you said it best. And I'll just follow up with, we continue to say things like we lead by example, and sometimes we don't give our teammates a little bit of credit. They would have completely understood, I think, your situation. You know that now, but at the moment you wanted to do right by your team, and I think we all see that. They probably know that as well. But it's good to reflect on that. We can trust the resiliency of our team, and that just as they can see your efforts towards them, that you as the leader can see the efforts of them towards you and their support. So I'm very sorry that you had to go through that. But thank you for sharing and for obviously growing from it. I haven't deployed since I've had children, although I have 4 deployments. And I remember my first deployment when we still had phone cards. If some of us remember that, we had phone cards, and And I remember calling people like aunts and cousins and grandparents because I was a young 20-year-old deployed to Iraq at that time. And then I have 2 deployments post-marriage, and but without children. So I believe all we know, most of us, is the effects of 9/11. We can obviously, most of us have been reflecting on that in the recent time, in the recent months, 20 years since, and that's really all we know. So, so thank you all for sharing that experience. And now that we kind of transition a little bit from the deployments, let's talk about that coming back, right? Your normal operations. What is your normal routine like? What is, or how do you find your work-life balance? What is the key for you to stay healthy, resilient, in every aspect, right? We talk about spiritual, mental, physical. So tell us what your secret is for work-life balance.
So I have to give a lot of credit to my husband because we both wear the uniform. He's been in about 15 years. And I think there's an incredible amount of understanding as to the importance of work-life balance and self-care. And I think Petty Officer Morales, I just loved your response to the last question about the importance of checking in with someone and talking about your mental health, your emotional health, and working out. And those are the conversations that my husband and I have, because we're in the family business together. And so there's an understanding when I say, hey, I need to tap out for a minute. I need to work out. I need to go to my craft room, or I need to, go get my nails done, whatever it may be. He understands that. And when he needs it, there's never a question of whatever our self-care looks like, it's self-care and we need it. And we both return back, better for ourselves, better for each other, better for our daughter, better for the airmen and guardians that we lead. And I think that's huge. And I think the other thing that enables our self-care is we outsource as much as possible. We, whether it's getting our house cleaned, whether it's ordering healthy meals so that we don't have to cook as much throughout the week, we outsource whatever we can outsource to better support our family and our mental and emotional, physical health.
Oh gosh, I'll just add, what I've learned along the way is to be honest with myself about my priorities. It is okay to prioritize work when work demands attention. I talked a little bit about performance. I never want to perform in such a way that I'm disadvantaged for promotion or assignment, because I love the Coast Guard. I love what we do. And if I'm not performing at work at this point, I have about 800 folks who work for me, and I need to get there for them. So I need to figure out, what are my priorities at work? What do I need to do? What do I want to do? And sort of what can I live with in terms of achieving the mission? And also the same at home. I remember there was a time when I was working on Capitol Hill, and I took a member of Congress from DC out to our National Motor Lifeboat School. And on one afternoon, we were out training, and I'll say it was 15 feet surf, because that's the limit for training. So we're out training in the surf in the Pacific Northwest. And then I excused myself. I hopped on a red eye and was able to get to the Boy Scout soapbox derby, and I still had seawater in my hair, but I got there for both of those priorities. That was important for the Coast Guard, that I execute that mission with that member of Congress, but for me as a spouse and as a mom, I just wanted to get there for my kids. So, finding ways, they're not always pretty, but to get it all done was me in that space. And I think the other thing I've learned is to say no. Saying no to your boss is one of the hardest things to do, but sometimes it's the right answer. And if you've trained your team, there's someone to step in behind you, whether it's in an acting or an alternate role. you know, to get the job done. That's not always going to be possible. But what I understand about my service is that, you know, there are rare moments when I am the only person who can get something done. But my job is to train my relief. My job is to train the team around me. And my children, one of whom you can sort of catch sight of in the background there, I apologize, but they've got 1 month. And that's important to keep a weather eye on.
But for me, I prioritize my family, and I make sure the soldiers perceive that from me. Why I say that? Because I take care of my parents, and that they are important for me. I take time to go visit them, to be in every medical appointment that they have. And when I was selected for my first command in 2016, I went from West Coast to Kentucky, and I bless the heart of the battalion commander that I had at that time, because she was also family centric, and that helped you also to shape and balance and prioritize your job and your family. At that time that I was in command, I remember we were in the field, and I received a phone call that nobody wants to receive. And she took care of me. And from that moment forward, I said to myself, as a leader, I'm going to give the other the opportunity to take care and go home and take care of their family. Because no matter if you marry, single, divorce, you know, you have someone that is going to depend on you and when they need you. And at that moment, you know, my brother was deployed. He couldn't come home until late. My older brother, he was dealing with everything, you know, and I had the fortune and the blessing to spend the last 45 days with my dad at home. She gave me that opportunity, and that is that I don't take for granted. And every leader had to set back a moment and say, you know, the job is always going to be there for you when you come back. Your family member, no. So go take time and do what you need to do with your family, and then come back when you realize, when your mind is clear, when you soul, and so you can give to the job the 100% that we demand in some moments. So I thank her, you know, in the Army, the leadership that I have, for giving me at that moment the opportunity to go home and take care of my parents.
For me, I'm like, it was easier to take care of myself when I was on the ship, just because it was just me that I had to worry about. But when I came back, I had to be a mom again, and that in itself was a whole new world. So now I'm a full-time sailor, a full-time spouse, and a full-time mom again. And thankfully, my command gives me enough time to take care of everything I need to take care of at home after work, and then gives me the time if I need to exercise or anything like that, I could do it during working hours. That way, when I go home, it's just me and my family, and that just motivates me to do more for my job now. And I see how much the Navy is taking care of me, so that I also want to give back to the Navy. And like Captain said, finding that balance and knowing when to prioritize work, knowing when to prioritize family. I was prioritizing my family a lot during the beginning of my career, which made my career slow down a lot. So I had 3 kids while I was in the service, and that it didn't look that great on me when I was trying to advance and go up for deployments or do things that, you know, other people were already doing. So as far as it goes for me, I decided that I wanted to do something more for my career. So I decided to start volunteering for deployments. And since then, I've noticed that my career has been actually taking off more. I'm more visible to the higher rankings, but I just knowing when to prioritize family and when to prioritize my career is something that I've learned how to do over time.
Yeah, so important. And sometimes As a senior NCO, I feel like I know this now. And maybe we can all relate when we were younger in our rank and we just thought, well, my boss is never going to accept this, or how can I tell my boss no? Or how can I ask for time off when I know everyone else is working? But hopefully your testimonies and really your journey, what you've shared with us today, and Sergeant Major Mari Siriaco, thank you for sharing that. That is what a blessing that you had the leadership that you had, and that they were able to support you and allow you the time and the worry-free of spending that time with your father and with your family. You will cherish, as we can tell that you do, you will cherish that relationship for a lifetime. Because our commitment to the military doesn't mean that we're not committed to our families. And now, as a senior NCO, I know I can say, no, boss, like I need to take leave at this time, or I'm declining this engagement because of something that I've already committed to previously. And hopefully we can make our younger NCOs, our younger airmen, guardians, Marines, soldiers, Coast Guard, and know that we've gone through that, and they can feel comfortable enough to say, or at least ask the question, well, what about this situation? And find that you are more sympathetic or empathetic than they may know, right? Or find that out. Thank you for sharing that. With that said, what advice would you give Latinas serving in the military to make it to where you are today?
I would say it's never too early to find a mentor. And I know I mentioned earlier I didn't really see a lot of Hispanic leaders, specifically female leaders. And there's a lot of power behind that when you see someone who looks like you, or who maybe is from the same place that you're from, or has a similar career path as you. And sometimes it can be tough, other times it can just kind of motivate you to keep looking, keep going, keep performing, or just be that visible out front leader to kind of set the example and let other women or Latinas know, like, hey, I'm here, I'm available to you. But I also think some great advice that was given to me early on in my career is, you don't just settle for one mentor, collect them almost like the peanut gallery. So that way you can get different perspectives from different people, men, women, different backgrounds as far as ethnicity, race, and even your jobs, because there's a time to go to different people to kind of leverage experience that you may not get from one mentor in your peanut gallery. So.
Colonel, I think that's great advice, and I would only add, like, remember to find a mentor who's junior to you. In particular, as you become more senior in an organization, many of your blind spots are in your wake. So maintaining close contact with, people who are outside your chain, so they're not afraid to call you on your own garbage, but who really understand the organization and operations from a different perspective than yours, but that you are impacting is something that I found has been incredibly valuable. The other thing, I talked about performance, and I'll say it again, right? Like, the key to success and the key to being able to have a strong voice in your career is performing. And, whether you're in a job you chose, or you're in a job that was nowhere on your, we would call it an e-resume, and you're dreading going to, just get up there and knock it out of the park. Put yourself in a position to be part of the team that makes decisions about your future, because that's what gives you the opportunity to honor your priorities from a work-life balance perspective. That's what gives you a place to stand on to say, hey, you know what, boss? Not going to make it. My deputy's going to take this one, or my alternate's going to take this one. So performance is super important. And I will say, all of us here on the line are leaders. And just make sure you're true to who you are as a person, when you're making leadership decisions. Because, we've all got stuff as people that we're curating in the workplace, right? Like you don't put all your stuff in the middle of the room when you throw on the uniform and you get into the military service. But if you're not true to who you are at the core, when you step into that, onto the ship or onto the battlefield or wherever you're going, that'll start to fray at the edges when you have to be that crisis leader. So I would just offer that, the times in my own career where I would have made different choices is when I could have erred on the side of being more generous. That's just who I am as a person. And when I shied away from doing that for whatever reason, those are the decisions that I would go back in my time machine and change.
My advice will be, don't be afraid who you are, from where you come from. Don't challenge yourself because you speak with an accent. Everybody does this day, and they are very successful. Don't take no for an answer. Embrace your job, perform above and beyond, set example, and also, willing to give what you learn to others and share your experience, because at the end of the day, we become professional in what we do and who we are. And if we share with others and we come out of that shell, when I was in my 20s, I was very timid. I can barely speak with no one. And I was all in my own bubble. And as I become in rank and I learned how to, hey, I had experience. Why I cannot get that job? I go after. And I went after my goal. So I told my soldier, build your plan, 5-year plan, and see yourself where you are today from where you wanted to be in 5 years. And you develop yourself, you will be able to develop others as well. And then gonna learn from you. So don't be afraid, be humble. That's one of my things that I tell my soldier, be humble and accept who you are and be willing to give to others.
So I think the biggest advice I would have for any Latina in the service right now would be just stay true to yourself. If you came in with the intent to retire and things change and on the way, just make sure that you follow what your heart wants. The military might not be your end of, it's not where you're going to end up in the military. You might not retire, you might just stay in for 4 years, but just stay true to yourself. If you decide to stay in just because it's what people want, then you're not going to be happy. It's just not worth it anymore. So I think my advice would be to just do what you want. And if family changes your opinion of the military leader, then so be it, but just stay true to yourself. And I think that was a huge thing that with me and my career, because having kids, I really didn't know if I wanted to stay in anymore. I didn't know if that's something that I wanted to give up the military to just become a full-time mom. But I stayed. I knew I wanted to retire when I came into the military. That was my goal. I wanted to retire, and just because things changed along the way doesn't mean that my goal was going to change. So I guess just stay true to yourself and do what makes you happy. If the military makes you happy, stay with it. If it doesn't, then just move to something else.
Incredible advice. And if I can capture it all in a few seconds, let's see. Find mentors, collect them, because everybody brings their own strengths, right? So seek what strengths or qualities or personality traits you love of them, and you can emulate and kind of stick to them. Being true to yourself, really following your personal values. What is it that you value? And follow your gut, your heart. One of the I love Sergeant Major that you mentioned, the language barrier that you face and maybe being timid earlier in your career. And I remember English being very much my second language and finding every book I could start reading so I could learn more words and gain a larger, more expand my vocabulary. And I would ask my husband, who I was dating at that time, how do you pronounce this, or how do you pronounce that? And really what that came to also show me was knowing my worth. Knowing what you bring to the table doesn't mean not being humbled, right? But knowing your worth is important to know what goals to follow, or what path you want to follow. Know where you should stand or where you should sit and who next to. Know your worth. It's very important. I want to share a really quick story because Lieutenant Colonel Roberts, you mentioned representation, and I'm such a believer that representation matters. And a lot of times it doesn't really necessarily mean in a look perspective, like someone looks Latina and that's who I need to emulate. I am stationed at the Pentagon currently, and I'm fortunate enough to, because I know my worth, I'm fortunate enough to work within the Air Force headquarters, and I brought my children to the office one day because they needed to get ID cards, and my daughter walking through what we call the Air Force glass doors, saw all these incredible photos, pictures, portraits really of our Air Force leaders, previous leaders, historical. And my 7-year-old, without missing a beat, she said, "Why is it all boys?" And I turned to her, and it was such an incredible moment because I was able to share gender roles, traditional gender roles, and how far our military, really our world, has come. And I said, as I'm explaining all of these positions and our roles that these men played within our Air Force history, I was also fortunate to say, but you know what? I can show you even better. Let's walk into the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force's office, who is the first female highest enlisted position in any of our services. And I said, let's just walk in here and meet or see. I knew Chief Bass, Chief Master of the Air Force Bass, was not in the office because she travels a lot. But I'm honored to work very closely with her team. And it was very random. It was not expected, but representation matters. If a 7-year-old can identify that the pictures on the wall are not like her, then young NCOs, young officers, young service members can identify if someone is true to them, to themselves, and if they can see themselves in someone else. So I really appreciate you sharing those testimonies and advice to us. To close that up maybe a little bit, how would you feel that the military, speaking of representation and change, how would you feel, or how do you feel the military has changed when it comes to women working in the military?
Well, I'll start. I'm so proud of the Coast Guard and the changes that the organization has made, really to reinforce a culture of respect for everyone in the service, in particular for women at this moment. We actually have a program that a woman or primary caregiver, if you're adopting a child, can take time off of work. Obviously, mothers get a medical convalescence and get the new additional parental leave on top of that. But we actually have a program where Coast Guard headquarters will fund active duty for operational support for a reserve service member to come and backfill that position. Understanding, like anyone who's departed their operational unit in particular for any length of time feels that pressure to come back, the pressure to support the team, to support the duty rotation, patrols, deployments, that kind of thing. We as a Coast Guard have found a way to alleviate some of that stress by hiring reservists to come in. So that's, you know, good for the individual service member who's out on that parental leave. It's good for the reservist who may want that, you know, that richness of experience from providing that operational support for some length of time. And it's good for the rest of the active duty component to really get to know our CELRES counterparts when they are augmenting. So I think what an incredibly innovative program to really support and retain our most talented workforce, whether it is the mom who's staying home, or whether dad is a primary caregiver, or we've got two moms or two dads, right? There's a surrogate or an adoptive program, something along those lines. I just think it says a lot about how important it is to retain the most talented workforce by meeting them where they are and supporting them so that they can achieve their priorities as whole people.
Well, I'll share. I was incredibly fortunate to be a part of the Secretary's task force last year to lead some Air Force and Space Force lines of effort to identify barriers that may have or may be continuing to impede not just recruitment, but retention and the ability for underrepresented communities to flourish in the Department of the Air Force. And so I think the fact that these conversations have already been going on in the background for quite some time, but now they've been elevated just kind of due to some of the changes we're seeing in society. That kind of tells me that we're having more family-friendly conversations. We're having more inclusive conversations and opportunities that target women and underrepresented communities to make sure that they understand there's a place for them. There's a place at the table, whether it's the Space Force holding a December event every year on their anniversary to intentionally reach out to elementary age children to make them aware of what the Space Force is doing and the skill sets that they will need as they come up along the way, so that when it's time for them to enlist or commission, they already meet the requirements. Or whether we're talking about individuals with disabilities or women, we're having these conversations to make sure that these underrepresented demographics know that there are opportunities for them to excel, to tap into their own potential, and that there's a seat at the table for them too.
I agree with both of you. Here in the Army, it's great to see how the Army gave us as a female the opportunity to be in leadership position, to attend to those schools that were designed just for male, ICE Ranger, Sapper for the engineering, and other OMOSs that are very contrite for female, and they open the opportunity for female to come, and we overrule, we overcome, and sometimes our performance is above the standard, and because we are so competitive, and we fight for what is right, and we want to have the voice be listened to the other, because we bring something to the table as a junior enlisted NCO officer. No matter where you role you play in there, you have a important place on the table that you have to say, and your job performance, you commit, your dedication, your inspiration also counts there, and how you project professionally yourself it talk about everything else. So in the opportunity, people first, I gave my female soldiers, I gave them the opportunity to turn that time to take care of their family and to perform their job. So that's what I do in my organization. I always, put myself in their shoes and say, okay, what if I had the kids is sick, I'm gonna tear that burn out of you, go take care of your family now. And then we carry out the other priorities. So we had to balance that and give them the opportunity to lead soldiers as well, because they have a good leadership style.
So in 2011, I was still in aviation community. I was one of two females in a detachment that went on the USS Howard. I was actually one of the first females to go at an air detachment. They found me and another female, so we were one of the first ones to actually do that. So that for me meant so much in my young career, because I had only been in for about, I want to say 3 years. I was in the Navy, and that was huge for us to be one of the first women to go as an air detachment onto the USS Howard was a really big deal. And then now I'm going to a Sea-Doo battalion where it's mainly male dominated, and I didn't get chosen for my gender, for my ethnicity. I got chosen for my qualification, and I think that speaks volumes when we are able to get chosen, picked for our qualifications, not because of anything else, and get chosen with the males as well. And that just, it speaks volumes as to how all the branches are moving forward and how we're being put as equal now, and hopefully in other areas. But I know that in the area of qualifications and actually being up for a job, I got the opportunity to get a job that I really, really wanted. So I think that's, we're moving forward, and I'm really, really excited to see what's next.
Petty Officer First Class Morales, congratulations, number one, on the achievement of that assignment you did when you were younger in your career, being one of the first females to accomplish that. So incredible. And I think you're right. You got selected for this upcoming position based on your skills. I agree with all of you. I think our services as a whole, we're making huge strides. Recognizing that, first of all, we're very smart. Women, we're very smart. And I don't think it was just considered that we could play the same roles. It was just natural how it was done before. And we have a voice. We now know our worth. We're able to articulate, to separate. I know this could be maybe a sensitive subject or word, but many would argue that we lead with our emotions. Well, let me tell you, I feel like my emotions are valuable. And that doesn't mean that I'm weak. It just means that I can follow my heart or follow my instincts. Doesn't mean that we need to cry at every situation, but nonetheless, emotions are important, because a lot of times they guide, based on our values, they guide what decisions, whether strategic, operational, tactical, what those decisions are that we're making. So I agree with all of you that we're making great progress throughout the Department of Defense in every branch to embrace women in the military, positions that women can hold, growing in higher ranks, leading, commanding, being responsible for 800 sailors on a boat, on a ship. Like, that's incredible. That is incredible things you're all doing. Colonel Roberts, when you mentioned kind of initiating, showing, going to schools and letting the next generation know who we are. When I was and I'll just give you a really quick story, that one of my great mentors, friends, and previous wing commander, he was the wing commander for basic training, and I won't say his name, although he's amazing. But one of the things he said, we hosted thousands of family members every single week for Air Force basic graduations, basic military training graduations, where we would have an average of 700 to 800 airmen graduating weekly, which meant we were hosting 4,000 to 5,000 family members each week at this one installation. I was fortunate enough to lead the reception center at basic military training, where we were hosting and welcoming all of these families. But one of the things that really stuck to me is every 2-year-old, 6-year-old, 20-year-old, 40-year-old that comes through those doors, not only is it a recruitment or a retention tool, right? Because those are the families that we're letting them know, trust us, your airman is in good hands. And so I feel like that would apply for all of our services. We want those generations, we want the families, we want those we hold closest to us to know that we are safe in our service, that our brothers and sisters in arms have our back. And whether I'm Latina, a woman, or not, that I joined another family and that we're going to take care of each other. What I want to really just close, I want to thank all of you. First of all, congratulations for being recognized this year with Latina Style and the Citizenship Award in military service. We're so proud of you. We are honored to be a part, to serve alongside you and to learn from you today. And again, we just want to say thank you and congratulations. With that said, please help me bring back our 2021 National Latina Symposium host, who is also the president and CEO of Latina Style, Mr. Robert Bard.
Thank you to our award recipients for participating in the Nurturing Latina Success panel. We commend you and we thank you for your exemplary service. We would like now to recognize our 2021 Veteran of the Year, Dr. Jennifer M. Peña. Dr. Peña commissioned into the Army in 2004 and ended her service as a major in 2019. Her Army experience included tours of duty in Afghanistan. Upon leaving the service, she entered the team at the White House Medical Unit, where she served under 2 presidents. Her roles included officer in charge of the White House Medical Unit largest clinic in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. She was also the senior physician at the medical director at Camp David, and most recently as the physician to the Vice President of the United States. Congratulations, Dr. Peña, and welcome.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you to Latina Style for this honor. I'm a proud Army veteran. I'm also the spouse of an active duty service member. I'm the great-granddaughter, granddaughter, daughter, niece, and cousin of US Army veterans. On this now 3rd year outside of uniform, I'm really humbled and proud to continue my mission to advocate for all of our fellow veterans and everybody who has served and sacrificed for our country. You know, the transition into civilian life has been, like I like to say, like a tricky land navigation course for those of us in the Army who have had to do that. Land navigation, it can get pretty complicated. There are times in which I have found myself reading a map in the dark, as they say, with endpoints that are sometimes too close together to tell apart. But what I have learned is that if you continue to move forward, at some point you'll eventually get somewhere. I know so many of my fellow veterans can relate to this experience, but the great thing is that as veterans, we have been trained to deal with these challenges. And I've learned that being a veteran is a tool. It is not a crutch. We have the skills, the discipline, the work ethic, and we should always proudly wear those as badges of honor. We have all lost something or someone. We've all had to make sacrifices that we are proud of. And some of us have to deal every day with battle wounds that the best of modern medicine sometimes really can't seem to heal. But to my fellow veterans, I say, don't forget that you have battle buddies for life that are only a phone call or an email or a text away. So don't forget that you're not alone, my fellow veterans. And whether you are a veteran or not, I encourage you to find ways to get involved with the veteran community and help care in some sort of way for those of us who continue to bear the physical, emotional, and psychological scars of the sacrifice of serving our country. And especially during these times that are unprecedented, there's so much social, political, and personal challenges out there and a lot of isolation. So just being there to connect in some way for a veteran can really make a huge difference. Thank you again to Mr. Bard and Latina Style for honoring our heroes, continuing to honor those who sacrificed, and God bless all of my fellow veterans. Thank you so much.